Hello, everyone. Like he said, my name is Stephany. I have an academic background in horticulture and landscape design. But what I really love is raised bed gardening. Today I'm going to touch on raised bed gardening, but I'm going to talk more about fall vegetable gardening in Florida. But before we start, I don't know if any of you guys have seen me on social media, but what people really like to see on my social media is the videos of me harvesting. And I'll play one of you for you guys so you kind of can see what I do.
Together.
Sorry.
Chocolate cherry. This is what we can harvest.
Let's harvest.
And that's a small harvest, because sometimes it's like, when it's like high in the season, it's something like this. I harvest too many tomatoes sometimes that I don't even know what to do with it.
Well, now you've got friends here.
I do need tomato friends. I do need friends to share my tomatoes with, because I'm literally like dropping tomatoes in my neighbor's door because I don't know what to do with it when it's like on the peak of the season. There's like frozen tomato, there's tomato salad, tomato to everybody that I know, and I do need people to share with it. So my garden is 13 raised beds, about 20 fruit trees. I have too many perennial plants. I have no idea how many I have. And it's less than 3,000 square feet, my whole backyard. The space that we are actually utilizing is probably half of that. So our fruit forest is extremely dense, and to kind of go through it, you kind of have to like be careful because the plants keep hitting me on the face. So these are some of the things that I harvest from my garden, like massive onions. We harvest in the beginning of the year, 130 onions, 150 garlic heads, and we harvest some of the onions were almost a 2-pound. Cabbage. By the end of the season, I couldn't stand eat cabbage anymore because I planted way too many. And carrots, that's my favorite crop. That's the picture that I utilize the most. So the reason why I like raised bed gardening is because of the accessibility. It's easier to manage, less weed, less competition for nutrients because all the plants that are in the ground, they're competing for the nutrients with anything that you have on the ground, the trees, the grass, weeds, anything that can pop up. Fewer pest problems, bunnies and moles. Moles are not really a problem. In Florida, bunnies are. I had actually bunnies have babies on my backyard last year, and they ate all my sunflowers that were in the floor. Better control of the soil, so you can kind of control your medium. You can do whatever you want. It's harder to make your soil better when it's in the ground. And better water usage. It's very easy to determine how much water you need on your raised beds. And the biggest reason for me, organization. I'm a very organized person, so I like when things are neat and organized, especially my vegetables. My food forest is a kales, but my husband takes care of that, not me. So how many of you guys would consider yourself a new gardener, if you could raise your hand? Okay, so I would say about half and half new. The other half, I'm assuming it's somewhat experienced with Florida. Florida is wild. Summer gardening is wild, especially for vegetable gardening. There's not a lot that can handle this heat. And it kind of makes sense. Even for us, it's hard. Like on summertime, I go outside, I'm like dying. It's too hot. So it's different. It's a special place to garden because when the whole US is gardening on summer and showing their beautiful harvests, we're kind of cooped inside because it's just too hot. So the most important thing when it comes to gardening is working with the seasons, is know when to plant what. So fall and spring, it's pretty much the same for us. The biggest difference is that we're coming from from hot temperatures to cooler temperatures, and the spring is the other way around. And fall, the pest pressure is much higher because winter kind of tends to kill and reduce a lot of those pests. So spring is easier to garden than fall, but temperature-wise is pretty similar. One of the key things when it comes to vegetable gardening in Florida is choosing the right varieties. For example, there's this broccoli variety that I really like. It's called Piracicaba broccoli, and it can handle up to 90 degrees. Most broccoli cannot handle up to 90 degrees. I actually grew Piracicaba up until like May, and it was happy, it was doing well. And I also really like it because it's a shooting broccoli, so you harvest many heads of broccoli instead of just one big one. So season planning, fall gardening starts on summer. Most of my tomatoes, all of my tomatoes, I started 9 weeks ago, and they are already on the ground. So if you want to start from seed right now, it's kind of late to start from seed. To transplant is the perfect time right now. So I think the most important thing when it comes to know how to garden in Florida is to understand our average temperatures by the month and to read the label of your seed package. I think the biggest mistake that people make is not reading the labels of the seeds that you get. The labels, they have a lot of information when it comes to temperature, when it comes to if there's any certification that you have to do, and how long does it take to harvest whatever you plant. So for example, I have here in my hand Swiss chard seeds, and it says it takes about 55 days to harvest. And I believe the temperatures, it's not, okay, it's soil temperatures optimum 86 degrees. So it takes 55 days for us to be able to harvest the Swiss chard. So if we come here, when is it on those ranges? So around September, October, that's the perfect time to transplant. So I already started mine in September, and then I'm gonna transplant on October to harvest, probably start to harvest about November, December. And I could even start another one in January that I could harvest around March and April. So that's why it's very important to read your seed packages and see what they're saying. I created a growing zone for a growing guide for every single USDA zone. So all of the zones, I have a growing guide. However, I am not sharing because I don't think people should fully rely on that to decide when to plant, because here in Florida, here in Central Florida, we're 9B, and 9B in California is wildly different. I follow a few people that have blogs in California about vegetable gardening, and what they're doing right now, they're doing all the tomatoes, all the zucchinis, even some cool season stuff, and it's thriving. Here in Florida, the best that we have right now is like sweet potatoes, that's it, okra, hot peppers, you know. So even though both of us are zone 9B, it's not the same. So I don't think relying on the USDA growing zone is 100% helpful. It's helpful to know your frost, when is your first frost date and your last frost date, and that's about it. So season overlook, so what happens in fall? So we have less rain, the sun position is gonna be lower in the sky. So for example, in my house, my raised bed garden is on my right side, and on summer, I don't get any shade on my raised beds because the sun is literally above me. However, in the winter, the sun is gonna be a little bit more to my right, and I have a fence. And all of my raised beds on the right side, they're fully shaded on the middle of the winter. Temperature, the temperature drop. So what do you have to do to prepare for fall? You have to mend your soil. Florida soil is sand. It's not really soil. You guys probably noticed that. Of course, it varies. There's pockets and there's the different kind of soil, but generally speaking, our soil is pretty sandy. So one of the things that I do, it's add a lot of organic matter, fertilizer, and there are things that you can do such as crab meal. Crab meal kills it releases something called, oh man, I forgot the name. But basically kills the root knot nematodes, which is a big problem in Florida. So I apply crab meal every, I don't know, 3 to 6 months. It depends how like I see my plants react. The fertilizer I do, in the beginning of the season, I read the back of my of the fertilizer that I utilize, and I see what is the recommendation rate, and then I apply the fertilizer, and I do once a month a light application of organic fertilizer. I just get the all-purpose one that the big box store has. I don't use anything special. I haven't noticed any difference between different brands. They're pretty similar, so I don't have any to recommend. Watering. Once you transplant new seedlings, you gotta keep on top of watering, especially the first like 2 weeks, because they don't have the root system established yet, and it's still really hot, so they're gonna struggle if you don't hand water them. I do have an automated irrigation system set up, but I don't feel like it's enough. It's for transplant seedlings or even direct sowed seedlings, so I recommend hand watering for 1 or 2 weeks. And also, we got a plan for the lower sunlight and the sun being lower on the sky. In my house, like I said, my raised beds, they don't get as much sun on winter. So all of my leafy greens, I plant on the right side. So anything that you're gonna grow for the leaf, you can get away with less sunlight. Lettuce, collard greens, kales, arugula, all of that, you can do well without a lot of sunlight. Transplanting. So I start all of my seedlings indoor. Right now I have about 150 brassica seedlings indoor. I just transplanted 8 tomatoes. I got 5 tomatoes from David from Practical Plants. I got some tomatillos from him because I didn't plant tomatillos, I forgot. But all of my seedlings that I start indoor, I have to harden them off. What is happening inside of my house and what's happening outside is totally different. Inside my house, it's a controlled environment. The temperature doesn't fluctuate a lot. It's between 72 to 78 degrees. The light, my growing light is not comparable to the sunlight, and there's no wind. So if you were to take your seeds, if you grow inside and take them outside and transplant them, they're gonna die. I guarantee you. You're gonna go in the morning, transplant them, and then you're gonna go and they're gonna look white and dead because it's not the same. The growing difference inside and outside, it's a lot. So you have to harden them off. So what I do to harden my seedlings off, I bring them outside and I increase the amount of sunlight by 1 to 2 hours a day until it reaches 6 to 7 hours. Then I transplant them on the raised beds. And what I do inside, I get a fan, put it on my seedlings to kind of mimic the wind outside to kind of strengthen those stems so my plants will be ready for the outside. Other things that I also like to do, mycorrhizic fungi into the roots of the plants that I transplant. But mycorrhizic fungi, it's a beneficial fungi that forms association with the roots of the plant. So the fungi gives some nutrients to the plants, and they get, I believe, sugar. I don't remember. I forgot. I'm sorry. In exchange, but basically, it's a mutual relationship between the fungi and the plants. Not all the plants forms association with mycorrhizal fungi. I believe brassicas don't. So when it comes to being the authority on the state of Florida for planting, UF is their authority. They are the best one. They post the most accurate information overall. I do disagree with them in some aspect, but gardening is one of those things that we can always experiment with stuff. I love gardening because if I kill a plant, I kill a plant. I'm glad I'm not a surgeon. I would not like to be a surgeon because that's a lot of responsibility. If I kill a plant, I have 10 to replace. So what I kind of disagree with then is, for example, right now, September, they say you can plant cabbage, cauliflower, collard greens, lettuce, Swiss chard, and I believe they say beets. I wouldn't. I tried. It doesn't do well. Most of the brassicas, anything above 80, 85, they're like, I'm out. With the exception of varieties, they're adapted to Florida. Like I said, the Piracicaba broccoli does wonderful. So Piracicaba broccoli, if you do have the seedlings or if you have the seeds, now it's a great time. I'm actually transplanting mine this week. But generally speaking, they don't like it. It's still way too hot for them. I would transplant them in October. October, it's much better. I think the highs are around 85, so they can kind of handle that. Also, celery, I wouldn't do now. Carrots, I tried September. I tried last year. I tried like 5 times. It didn't germinate. And I have other friends that kind of told me the same thing, that it doesn't do well for them. But like I said, gardening, you can always try and see if it does well for you. It does well for you. So things that we can plant now: warm season vegetables, tomatoes, zucchini, cucumbers, beans. Sweet potatoes, they love the heat. So you can put them in the ground now. They're gonna do well. Sweet potato is probably the easiest thing that have ever grown. It thrives on neglect. I joke that you can get a slip and just throw in the ground, and you're gonna get sweet potatoes in like 3 to 4 months. But if you don't have a lot of space, I wouldn't do sweet potatoes now. I just would leave it for summer. And the cool season vegetables: carrots, beets, broccoli, cauliflower, collard greens, Brussels sprouts, lettuce, cilantro, parsley, and a bunch of other stuff. So one thing to think about is that we have long season vegetables and we have short season vegetables. So cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, that's all the brassicas. They're a little bit of a, well, according to Google, they're short season vegetables, but they're like 100 days. I'm like, that's a long season vegetable. And we have the short season vegetables, which the stuff that takes like 40 to 90 days to be able to harvest. So what I like to do, I like to plan my gardening, my vegetable garden around this. So for example, right now I planted, I have the tomatoes, I have peppers on the ground, I have beans, I have zucchini, cucumber, and I think that's all. So once my tomatoes start to give out and all my warm season stuff start to give out, I can, if I don't have a lot of time, I can put some of the short season stuff to kind of like, to buy me time before I plant more stuff. So I really like to play between the long season and the short season vegetables. So I always have something going on. Like radish is really good. If you don't know what to plant and it's still cool, you can plant radishes 30 days, 40 days. You're probably gonna harvest some radishes. Pest and disease management, common fall pests that we have: aphids, caterpillars, spider mites. What I've learned is that preventions is one of the best things that you can do when it comes to gardening, vegetable gardening, and having a variety of plants. We have to work with nature rather than against nature. If you have a lot of flowers, a lot of different plants, you're gonna attract a lot of beneficials, and they're gonna help you kind of reduce some of the pest pressure. Still, we're gonna have pests. A garden without pests is worrisome. Why? There's no pests. There's no way to eradicate them. That's why I use integrated pest management. We're managing them. We're not eradicating them, because the things that kill all the pests is not the things that you want to be around. So yeah, sanitation, it's another big thing. And planting resistant varieties, a big thing about having a vegetable garden in Florida is planting stuff that's resistant to things that we have here. So tomatoes, they're resistant to root nematodes, or planting tomatoes that are resistant to blights, cucumber that is resistant to powdery mildew. So that really helps a lot, but I know that the reason that everybody have a vegetable garden or that they garden is different. I know some people, they don't want to mess with hybrids. They want heirlooms. They want plant stuff that they can save seeds from. For me personally, it's a hobby, it's my profession, it's therapy. I like to to harvest some of the food that I eat. So I kind of do a little bit of everything. I have heirlooms, I have hybrids, I have cultivars. So cultivars, you cannot really save seeds through to type. So I have all of the wild range of types of different seeds because I don't really care a lot about saving seeds. I do save some seeds, but my goal is to kind of like produce a little bit of the things that I like, have some stuff that does really well in Florida, and save some seeds. So like I said, things that I do every month, vegetable fertilizer. I highly recommend looking to getting your soil test and the UF IFAS. I don't think it's too expensive. I think it's around $5 to get your soil tested, so you can kind of see how to better fertilize your soil. I have 13 raised beds, 6 in-ground beds that are 30 feet by 3 feet. So for me, it would be very difficult to test all of them. And I do have my academic background that helps me knowing how much to fertilize, so I don't really get my soil tested. Every few weeks, I do fish emulsion, earthworm tea, microorganism inoculation. I don't do every few weeks though. I don't know why it's there. I do maybe like once every 6 months, fungal inoculation, and fish emulsion. Right now, what I do in my tomatoes every single week, I do fish emulsion for about 4 to 6 weeks. So what fish emulsion is going to do, fish emulsion is rich in nitrogen, so it's going to encourage a green growth of the plants. So my tomatoes get nice and big, and then I stop, because then I want my tomatoes to start really like producing. And also another thing that I do with my tomatoes, I pinch all the flowers. So right now they about 18-inch tall. I don't want them fruiting right now. I want the tomatoes to focus on growing, and then once they get to a nice size, they can start fruiting. Watering, to determine water, check the weather app. If you're experienced in gardening, you probably like check daily to see if it's gonna rain, if it's gonna not. Moisture check, the way that I check the moisture in my raised beds, I just stick my finger. If it looks wet, it's wet. And also it's important to know individual plant water needs. Some plants need a little bit more water than others. And use water efficient systems. I have drip irrigation system. I love, it's the best investment that I have ever done in my raised bed garden. Before we did drip, we're spending 2 hours a day watering everything. Now I spend less than a minute, just press a button, everything is watered. Drip irrigation is the most water efficient system. Utilize 90% of the water that it actually takes. Compared to sprinklers, is like 40, 50%. So it's a very good system. And another thing that I really like about drip irrigation system is that it's not getting the plant's leaves wet. So water can carry pathogens, especially fungi. And for the cucurbits, such as zucchini, cucumbers, they're very prone to powdery mildew, which can be on the water. So anytime you're using an overhead irrigation system, your plant can get powdery mildew. So that's why I don't really also like overhead irrigation. Fertilize, different plants have different needs. A mistake that I made last year is that I fertilized my bed and I plant radishes. It had the most beautiful greens I have ever seen in radishes, and the radishes were like this big. They're very, very small. Radishes is a root crop. You're growing for the roots, so you don't want to have a lot of nitrogen where you're planting, otherwise it's going to grow beautiful greens, very small roots. That's also true for carrots and anything that you're growing for the roots. learn about different fertilizer and its use, organic versus inorganic fertilizer. So organic, the biggest difference between organic and inorganic fertilizer is that organic fertilizer, you're basically feeding the soil, and the microorganisms in the soil are breaking down the fertilizer to feed the plant. And inorganic fertilizer, you're feeding the plant directly. So you kind of starve whatever organisms you have going on in your soil. And with the inorganic fertilizer, it's very easy to mess up. It's very easy to burn your plants. I only have inorganic fertilizer for my indoor ornamental plants, and one day I made a mistake of accidentally using the fertilizer for my seedlings. I kill all of them. So, and I don't really use any kind of inorganic fertilizer on my outdoor plants at all, or any kind of non-organic pesticide. Everything that I use, it's organic. I'm gonna talk next about recognizing a plant, oops. Oh, sorry. Okay, favorite plant varieties, like I said, piracicaba, broccoli, tomatoes, chocolate cherry is my favorite. I have tried a lot of different tomatoes. When it comes to taste and how much it produces, chocolate cherry beats all the other tomatoes, in my opinion, every single time. And one thing that I really like, it's not a huge tomato, but it's also not too small. So it's like something that you can kind of use like in a sandwich, but you can also use in a salad. So I really like Black Beauty. I love the taste. However, it doesn't produce a lot of tomatoes. And it's one of the coolest tomato ever. It's just so pretty. So I grow also because it's pretty. Carrots, New Caruta, the best carrots. We tried a lot, and one that has been doing really, really well for us, it's Lunar White. That one I actually got at Baker's Creek, and I think it was one of the biggest carrots we harvest. It was a good size. Cosmic Purple is another one that did really good, and it was one of the sweetest ones for us. So those are probably our three favorites. Lettuce, Momo, and Jericho. Jericho, I think, is from, it was a lettuce bred in Israel. So it's heat resistant, but it's not like Florida heat resistant. So it's something that you probably can plant now, but not on summer. Onions, Walla Walla. And an alternative could be Florida Finley onions. David's gonna have them soon. They're little, very tiny onions, but they're like self-multiplying, and they are native to Florida. Garlic in Chilean red, that's what we did, or elephant garlic. So garlic, you have to vernalize them, which basically you kind of put them in the fridge for about 12 weeks. For the garlic to bulb up, it needs 40, the minimum of 40 nights of 40 or less degrees. Florida, we don't get that. So that's why you have to vernalize and put it then on the fridge, or you have to buy from somebody that already vernalized them. David, I think, selling them. I was gonna sell them.
Hey, David, you wanna raise your hand so everyone knows?
One sold out this week.
Oh, you're sold out, okay, okay. He's always sold out. It's sold out.
Florida.com.
Cauliflower, I really like Purple Sicily. I bought from Baker's Creek. It's a heirloom variety from Italy, I believe. It's very, very pretty and did really well for us. It was like huge. Cucumber, we have the native cucamelons. Honestly, I don't have any favorite variety of cucumbers yet, so that's why I kind of like put that there. Beans, Josh from a Codico farm, his land race. It's one of the best performing beans that I have seen. The peas, King Tut, Seeded Star sells them. Pepper, Cheirosa, Biquinho, Cap 455, Arredos. Cap 455 was insane. I never seen a pepper produce as much as that one. Cody Cove Farm sells the seeds, and it's a small pepper. It tastes like a bell pepper, and it produces like an absurd amount. I was not expecting it. There was a point I was like, I don't even know what to do with all these peppers. Biquinho, I love to eat with rice and bean, and Cheirosa, Cheirosa means like something that smells good in Portuguese. And those two peppers are from Brazil. I love them. The Cheirosa is great. It smells very good. It has very little heat, and it's great to add in meat. Radishes, daikon radishes do very well here in Florida. Potatoes, early valley and dark red Norland. Early valley we planted last year. You can harvest within 70 days, and it was insane. We got like this big of potatoes within 70 days, which normally doesn't happen. Potatoes are more like 90 to 120 days thing. So that one was really, really great. Eggplants, I don't know how to pronounce that. Kohlrabi, I don't have any preference yet. Celery, pink celery. I haven't tested pink celery yet. However, my friends from Plant Sage, they say that pink celery does well in Florida. Swiss chard, I have no preference. And sweet potatoes, Tanyung 64, which I believe you guys have the free slips right there, right? That's the Josh's sweet potato? Yeah. That's
Who
the
brought the sweet potatoes?
I did. It's the time now.
Thank you.
That's the best sweet potato I have ever seen. I'm gonna show you guys a picture in the end. We harvested like last year a massive sweet potato. I never seen like a sweet potato like that one. That one is the best one, hands down. So like I said, about soil. Soil is not dirt. Soil is full of microorganisms, essential for life. In a spoon of soil, I believe there's more microorganisms in a spoon of soil than are people on earth. So that's insane. And we know only about 7%, I believe, it's something like very small, of all the microorganisms that we have in the soil. So we know very little, we understand very little about all the life that it's on the soil. So some of the things that you can do to support the soil life, mycorrhizae, fungi, beneficial bacteria, good quality compost, mulch, biochar, no-till gardening, organic fertilizer, plant diversity, plant rotation, and just keeping the plant roots in the ground. I don't ever pull my my vegetables from the ground, with the exception of carrots and sweet potatoes, because that's what we eat. But tomatoes, all the brassicas, I just cut them on the soil line and I leave the roots there, kind of leave the soil structure undisturbed. So this takes with a grain of salt, because nutrient deficiency and other problems such as planting the plant at the wrong time, providing the wrong amount of water, can look like a plant deficiency, but cannot be a plant deficiency. So don't use this and say, oh, this plant is deficient, without trying to really assess what's going on. If you plant, let's say, a heat-loving plant on the middle of the winter, it's gonna look awful because it's a heat-loving plant. And you could think, oh, it's a plant deficiency, but it's not. It was just planted at the wrong time of the year. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer about anything.